Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. I do hope you're having a good day. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! This is episode 124, where I had the immense pleasure of having on the podcast today Donald James. We talked about a number of things. His time at NASA. He is a 35 year veteran at NASA, and we also talked about his book, which basically is called Manners Will Take You Where Your Brains and Money Won't. And we talked about space elevators, amongst other things. I have to say, this gentleman was a delight to have on the podcast. And I look forward to getting back on the podcast in the near future. So please sit back, enjoy the show, and have a fantastic day. And please make sure to subscribe. And thank you. Bye bye. Peace.
There we go.
Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on the podcast, I am very privileged to have Donald James. Now, this man, he is a former NASA man for 35 years. How can I put it? He went through, I see NASA in three stages: the golden age, the silver age, and basically the present. And I would say his era was the silver age of NASA, kicking off through the 80s with Mr. Ronald Reagan leading the charge. And he is also an author. His book, which is called oh my word, I don't know why I'm having a yes, there you go. Manners will take you where where your brain and money won't. We're gonna speak about his book there as well. Donald, look, before I mess this up any further, please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you, my friend. It's an honor to be on your podcast. It's an honor to meet you, and I'm grateful to you and your audience. I'm Donald James. I reside in Northern California, USA. 35 years at the American Space Agency, NASA, mostly in education to support young people in their inspiration to work in aerospace. I retired from NASA 2017. And after that, I decided, as I was reflecting on my life and my career, I knew in my heart I wanted to give back to the same young people, like I was young once and people helped me out and I was an intern. And I've been very privileged to have amazing people in my life. So I turned my attention to this book project, which is a combination of what I learned at NASA,
Mm.
lessons I learned from my mother, who was a very wise woman. She was a teacher, and she taught me about what manners really means. And I took those lessons and I brought them together in this book. And this book is my gift to the younger generation, to students and early career professionals. It's my view of things. If there's something that is resonates with people, that's wonderful. If not, then go to a different book and tell me about it. I'd be happy to do it. So I'm going to be 64 years young next week. And
Congratulations, sir.
thank you. Yes, March 16th. So all you March 16th birthday people out there, let me know. I like to know all the people who share my birthday, Pisces, man. And I've been married for 32 years to a wonderful woman named Tanya. I have two beautiful children, Brandon, who's 28, who recently married, and a daughter, Shauna, who lives in New York. She's an actor, and she's the best actor I've ever met in my whole life. And I love my children immensely, as well as my wife. So that's who I am, and I love to give. So what can I give to you today?
Now, what can you give for me today? Look, I would love to bang on about
Yeah.
NASA all day long. But you know what? Before we get there, I have to ask, what made you go, hey, you know what? I've finished at NASA, been there with 35 years, and I'm now a book. I'm embarking on that. What brought you to that place?
It started when the summer after I retired, I
Mm.
was asked to give a talk to a group of interns at NASA.
Yeah.
And it was about my career. And at the end of the talk, during the question and answer session, one young man raised his hand and said, if I could go back to when I was 25 years old and talk to myself, knowing what I know now, what would I say? And I said, that's a very good question.
Mm.
And I said a couple of things, but then I said, here's the truth as I see it. I would tell the younger Donald, you really need to work on your manners, broadly speaking, not just the polite stuff, not just the please and thank you and the
Mm.
courtesies and the etiquette, but the whole manner in which you show up in the world. Really work on that because, as my mother said, manners will take you where brains and money won't.
Mm.
And I realized after reflecting on my career that for me, that was absolutely the case. I'll be the first to admit to all your listeners, yes, I work for NASA. Yes, I'm a fairly smart guy, but you know what? I was not the smartest man in the room by far. I was not a straight A student. I was mainly B plus, A minus. I did okay. I was smart enough to do my job and I knew how to learn how to do things that I didn't know how to do. But what got me to be at the highest level in the United States government that a civil servant can be, was how I carried myself in a very broad, diverse way. So I told that young man that that's what I would tell myself is that that's a skill. It's like investing in your finance or investing in your health.
Mm.
You know, it does, you don't flip a switch and everything is wonderful the next day. It takes a lifetime. It takes work. It takes a team. It takes self-reflection. It takes challenge. You got to work on that. And I would say to Donald at 25 or even younger, you really need to work on this because that's going to carry the day. I also told the young man, and I said, by the way, I would also tell my younger self, when you hear about these companies called Google, Amazon, and Apple, buy a lot of stock in those. You won't regret that.
It's like, yeah, it's like Amazon, everything like this. Also, look at this thing called Bitcoin. I know
Yeah,
it sounds stupid, but yeah.
yeah, learn about it. So that got me thinking. And then not long after that, the very next month, my mother passed away. And it was a very sad, dark day for me when my mother passed. And I started thinking about how I can honor her life. And, she was a single Black woman raising two Black kids in the United States. And you can imagine what that was like. And I felt that going back when I thought about that young man's question, that I wanted to write a book, which is really a longer version of my answer to him. And so that's why I wrote the book. It's a longer answer to the question. What would I would want to read the book that I wrote when I was a student. This is the book that I wish I would have read.
Mm. Yeah, because when you say manners and like basically working on it, I might be reading into what you're saying maybe a little bit.
It's okay.
I'd be going wrong or something like this. But it sounds like it's sort of taking on, like, as you said, it's not about sort of manners, courtesy, and all of that side of thing. But it seems like addressing your mindset about your
Yes,
approach to people and situations, what might go on a sort of day-to-day basis. So you can carry
absolutely.
yourself, build those sort of important links and connections which might elevate you to that next stage in your life.
That,
Am I
that's
wrong?
right.
Yeah, I'm
Not
right.
at all. That is absolutely correct. And so one of the things that I learned among many is, for example, in the art of communication,
Mm.
communication encompasses not only speaking and listening, but it encompasses our body language. Our body communicates, whether anything comes out of our mouths or not. Our body says things. We also are aware that some people will react to me because of my body. See, I'm a 6'4" black man and I walk in the world, right? I have to be aware of the fact that sometimes, many times, maybe most of the times, people don't see the Donald James that my mother sees or my wife sees or that I see. People see a 6'4" black man. So I'm saying I can't be ignorant of that. So I'm aware. So I use that awareness and I use my intense presence to manage not only my own emotions and sense of it, but to be careful in an environment like a work environment. And I've learned some hard lessons as a result of that. And so it is more than just simple courtesies. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the courtesies are nice. I think civility is an important thing. And Lord knows, after the last 4 years in America, we need to work on civility. We still do. But I'm talking about presence. I'm talking about authentic presence where you're not compromising yourself in terms of your individuality. You're expressing yourself as an individual, but you're doing it in a way that is giving to the people that you're with rather than taking from the people that you're with. It's giving, and I love to give. In fact, I say that you really ought to just give. Give to not only people but give to yourself, right? So, for example, if I'm at work, and I know I'm going off a little bit on this, so you
Oh,
get,
no.
I get excited about this stuff, brother. So you just tell me to slow down, and I will. But when I'm at work, you see, I don't talk about it's time for me to take a break. I talk about giving myself a break,
Mhm.
right? Because the act of giving is an act of compassion, an act of love, an act of caring, because it takes something from your heart and puts it into somebody else's heart. And when you're doing it for yourself, you're giving back to yourself in
Yeah.
a way that's genuine. So this is what I wanted to explore, and it's difficult, right? Because you're talking to kids. It's like, so what does this mean? And I says, okay, for one thing, let me give you one example of what this means. And this is something that I say, I have a whole chapter on interviewing, right? Because interviewing is something that a lot of people are going to have to do. You interview for a job, right? You want to get the job and all that.
Yes.
And I say, why don't you look at interviewing much more broadly than that and accept the proposition that you're always interviewing? Even when it's not for a job, you're always interviewing. See, for a young man, right, he may be interviewing without him knowing a young woman to go to a dance or go to the pub or whatever. You may be on a train and you may accidentally have some light conversation with somebody and you don't know who that somebody is, but somehow because of your presence and because of how you show up, that person is impressed. And guess what? That person turns out to run a company and says, you know what, Moya, are you working now? Man, I'd like for you to be in my company because you're the type of person I want. Now, I've had experiences on both end of the spectrums when I've run into young people that so impressed me with their manners because of how they showed up. And I go into detail as to what they did that I said, dude, I'd like to hire you. The only problem was with the kid that I'm talking about, he was 11 years old and he was at a science fair and he was telling me about his science project because in my responsibilities with NASA, I was in charge of education and we supported these things, right? And this kid was amazing. I mean, he did everything right and I just felt connected to him. On the other end of the spectrum, I ran into a young man. It happened to be at an airport. I found something that somebody lost. I asked the gate agent, what should I do with it? They said, take it to the information desk. I go to the information desk, and this young man, probably 17 or 18, I don't know. I walk up to the information desk. He has his headphones on. He's looking at his cell phone, doesn't even look up to me. I get right up to the desk and I say, excuse me, I was told to bring this here. And he looks up at me and takes one of the headphones out, right? One of those AirPods.
Yeah.
And like he was asking me, like, what did you say? And I repeated it, and he took what I had and then said, and then didn't say anything, and then just put his earphones back in. And what I say in the book is that young man just blew his interview. Now, why do I say that? Because had he had presence, he might have stood up when I came in. Hi, may I help you? He might have engaged me in conversation. I like to talk, so I might have asked him about it. He might have found out that I worked for NASA, and he might have an interest in science. And he said, wow, I'd really like to do things like that. How could I do? And I could say, well, here's my card, but let me just give you a couple of pointers. I'd want to help him, right? Just like I wanted to hire that 11-year-old kid. That kid did nothing at that moment to inspire me to want to help him.
Yeah.
And so what I said is, he just blew his interview. So what I try to impress upon a lot of people, especially students, is carry yourself as if you were always interviewing. How would you want to show up? Don't be phony about it. I'm not talking about being phony. I'm talking about, watch your body language, watch your wording, watch, how are you engaging in the other people. So this is what I noticed in my career at NASA, because I worked around a lot of very smart people. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of smart people at NASA whose careers didn't go anywhere. They stalled because they did not understand these lessons, right? It's not good enough to be smart. Being smart is not good enough, right? Being smart might get you in the door, or it might get you the interview. But at the end of the day, if you don't understand how to have good manners, it's not going to work out very well. That's my belief.
Yeah, like this is the thing. One of the things when you're using the like example of the 11-year-old kid and the guy, like the kid who's like working behind the desk, taking out his AirPod and stuff like that, like it's a it's a very sort of interesting thing because I think it's a thing which is quite present in like you could say the developed world with quite a lot of people. They're not sort of there. They're like with when I say they're not sort of there, you mentioned present. I would say they're not sort of there. Look like going, okay, these are opportunities on a day-to-day basis which come to me. Now, you working in NASA for 35 years, you are surrounded by a lot of people who have direction and purpose. And like basically, that is the vast majority of people around you. Yeah, there might be some people which, as you mentioned, don't get there or don't get it and they fall by the wayside. But
Yeah.
most of the people are like going, yeah, we're going like I'm getting up in the morning, I'm getting the human race into space. And like, you know what? That is a huge thing. And like the guy behind the counter is like going, I'm just doing the job. And
Yeah.
it's a case of like you go, right, yeah, you might be just doing a job. And look, I can say I'm guilty of that myself, but it's still a case of you've got to be able to like snap you out of it. And it takes a lot of work sometimes to
It
move from
does.
one side to the other.
It does. And, my mother taught me that, she has her, and I use this in my book, her 8 cardinal rules of living. And one of them is about not judging people. You don't know their background and their story. You haven't walked in their shoes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know this kid's background. And, for all I know, it's things are tough and all this stuff. And I get that.
Mm,
But here's the other thing that I get. And this is really difficult for some people. The life is not fair and is not equal.
mm,
Not everybody starts the same place. I started much higher than where my father started. My father was a black man in the United States during segregation, and he rose to be an ambassador to the United States. He went to Yale Law School. He covered a lot of ground during a time when that was impossible. I didn't have any of those restrictions. I grew up when the Voting Rights Act was passed. There wasn't a lot of overt discrimination. I come to find out it wasn't, a little more subvert. But what
yeah.
I'm saying is I started off at a much higher place than my own dad did. And the truth is, in this world today, you aren't on the same the playing field is not level. So what I argue is because I think anybody can do this for the most part is, and this is one of the chapters I devoted to, is you need to organize a team of people in your life that you trust that can support you, right? This kid behind the information desk could have said something or done something to enroll me into his life to be a part of his team, and I could have given him some guidance and help. And I can said, here's some other people that you might want to talk to. You need to get a mentor. You need to make certain sacrifices. Don't think that you're going to necessarily have the same trajectory that I did. You're going to have your own trajectory. So there's ways of getting out of this because I've seen this work. I'm telling you, I have known people who used to be in gangs in the United States. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Gangs, people who kill people for fun, who got turned on to NASA robotics activities when they were in high school, and they left the gang and they decided that building robots they could do. And they went on to go to MIT because they turned out were very smart people, and they had mentors and they had help and they had vision and they had somebody who believed in them. And so what I'm trying to say is you can do this if you're willing to let people support you. Now, let's just be truthful about this. Some people don't, some people are so privileged they don't need to do all of that, right? They're born into privilege, right? Their daddy or mommy works for some big company and they just give them an internship without even having to be smart. That's the way it is, right? And it's going to take a lot to change a lot of those systemic things. But what I'm saying is that even if you don't have a lot, you think your home life is not good or whatever it is, or you're in the wrong crowd of people, if you say, I want support, I have a vision for something better than what I have now, I am saying there's a way of making that work. And so that's why I included the chapter. It's called Who is on Your Team?
Yeah.
That's what I would ask you. Who's on your team? And you know what? It could be you got the wrong people on your team, right? Because they're not out for your interests. They're takers. They're not givers. They're
Yeah.
takers, not givers. So I am sympathetic with people's history deeply, and it's sad to me to see the circumstances that people are in. But I can't go back in history and fix that. All I can do is suggest here's a way forward as I see it. And you know what? Try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. Because I've seen too many examples of people who have come out of the situation they're in and they've transformed themselves into something that's a better version of themselves. And that's what inspires me is when I see that.
Yeah, I think some of the problems is like I think there is this sort of realm of mystery. Okay, because if you look at someone at the beginning of their journey of whatever they're doing of something grand and amazing, no one sees that journey, that
That's right.
starting point, and no one sees the hard work, the trials, the tribulations which go on at the
That's right.
building, and like all of that type of work in between. They see the end result. And because it seems like it's practically instantaneous, everyone desires the instantaneous and don't actually do, well, they don't actually know about the work, what goes in at the beginning, the middle, and come to the final point, or understand it because it's just like, hey, here you go. Look, because like, look at yourself. You go, yeah, don't. You've been in NASA for 35 years, and like, we're just starting this conversation.
Yeah.
But I can just like go, yeah, you've been in NASA for 35 years. Great. That's 35 years of a healthy history right there. And then basically to get to NASA, that's another healthy history right there again. But
Yeah.
that's the, I think that is the sort of nagging problem for people who are maybe down on the sort of social like ladder of things. And when
Yeah.
you're talking about your father attending Yale,
Yeah.
like depending who you ask, number one or number two in the United States, I'm not going to go there with the Harvard like bashing. No, no, that's another story. But you get what I mean. Like,
I do.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah, how did your dad get to there? And it's like, yeah, and people don't see that. And I think with, which has been an advantage for you is, yeah, your dad had to struggle harder than he had, like you did to get to his point. But you more than likely had more contact with that story than say other people. So you could see the sort of nuggets and the sort of golden gems out there to lead
That's right.
you to the right path.
That's right. And that's why I was fortunate. My father's basic attitude was these rules don't apply to me.
Mm,
He told me this story when he was in a barbershop. This is a black barbershop in Philadelphia where he grew up. And he told the fellas when he was in high school, he said, well, I intend to go to college. And after college, I want to go to law school. And not only law school, I really wanted to go to Yale because he knew somebody or heard about going. And they just laughed and fell out on the floor and rolled over and everything. It's like, who does this little dude think he is? So and to him, he said, well, all the rules that say that it's not my journey to go this place,
mm,
they don't apply to me. And so somehow he structured his life to make sure that he could figure out how to move forward. And I now I don't know all the story and the history. My father was an orphan. He didn't even have parents. He was born an orphan, right? And he was taken in by the state, and then the Catholic charities took him in, and then eventually an aunt, I guess, pitied him and adopted him and his sister, and he was reared by this very strong aunt, right? And she was a devout Baptist, so she quickly got rid of his Catholic background and made him a Baptist.
it's like, no,
So
Catholics.
I
No.
don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was a church. Maybe it was how I remember her very well. She was very strong and very stern. But what I remember about my dad, and this is the takeaway for me that I want to share, is whatever rules that are invisible that we think apply to us, and you define who us is,
Mm,
right? Whatever that is. His attitude is those rules don't apply to me. I am the only one who defines the rules. And he went forward. In his late 80s, he was studying computers and taking classes, and he didn't care that he was 3 times as old as everybody else in the class. He just wanted to do it. So that's I think a helpful lesson. Yeah.
no, like this is the thing. It's a powerful lesson. It's a powerful message because look, when it comes to like defining yourself, like one of the things what sometimes plays in my head when I'm running everything like go out running in the morning, it's like master your mindset. Because when you start mastering your mindset, it's like it's weird because other things start to fall into place. You master your mindset, that means yeah, you master discipline. And that
Yeah.
discipline comes down to not discipline like you're punishing yourself, for anyone who might be listening, but discipline in just getting things done. A,
Yes.
B. And like the whole thing is the simple A, B, C, those steps, which are like sometimes small and annoying and repetitive, and you just go on and on and on. But those are the things what actually lead you down sort of the path of your individual greatness. And that
Yes.
greatness could be, yeah, just I've raised a family and I've got like a number of kids who are like doing stuff in their world. It might be a community leader or it might be something grander. Who knows?
Yeah.
But mastering your mindset, basically defining yourself. These are sort of key lessons I think more people need to sort of take on board because look, it's a new century. It's the 21st century. It's been around for like, yeah, 21 years. It like there's been more pandemics than more sort of things going around than a pandemic
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
I would say this next century, I think is going to be a true test of everyone's metal, even more so. Even though we might be ahead of our previous generations, but I think it's going to be a lot more challenging going forward.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right. And the whole mindset is, to me, it's a decision that you make, but there's a lot that goes into it, right? I can't just say, oh, I'm going to run a triathlon and I'm just going to put my mind to it. All kinds of physical and emotional and mental barriers are going to come up. So the question is, are you willing to have support? Are you willing to have help?
Mm.
Right? Are you willing to have, and what is it that you're willing to sacrifice and give up in order to do that? I often tell students, I said, if you want something good, you probably have to give up something bad,
Mm.
right? If you want something good, you probably got to give up something bad, right? If you want to have a good eating habits and eat right, you got to give up the chocolate milk. You got to give up the soda pop. You got to give up some of that stuff. And if you don't think that's true, go ask some health programs. Find out how many people say, "Oh yeah, drink all the soda you want." That doesn't matter. You're not going to find that. So there's sacrifice, right? It's the same thing with investing. I mean, how many times has anyone ever said, you know, spend all your money today because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and then expect in 30, 40, 50 years you're a millionaire because you had money? You're not going to have any money. If you want to have money later for a rainy day, and when you got to save now, you got to carve out whatever it is and pay yourself first and put it away. This is what I tell my children. I said, look, you want to be independent of the man or whatever it is, you need to carve out a little bit. I don't care if you're making $10 an hour or whatever it is. You take $1.50 and you put it in the bank. This is a habit. Just do it. Right.
Mm.
If you want to invest in that, if you want to invest in yourself financially, it's a long-term process of sacrificing spending, being able to spend it today in order to have it tomorrow. Same thing with your health, right? If you don't want to be sick and old and obese and all, then you need to start early and have a practice daily of eating properly and moving your body. And you need to figure out with your doctor, your nutrition, your own research, what is that like for you? But you can't expect to sit on the couch and eat whatever you want to eat, and then at 60 years old can't understand why you can't move
Huh.
and why you're subjected to getting COVID and all these other things, right? You can't expect that. So you got to invest. You want something good, you got to give up something bad.
Yeah.
Still working on it. I'm gonna be honest. I'm still working on that. I'm not saying it's easy, it's a struggle, right? I'm working on that myself with my health, particularly.
Mm.
So I'm not saying that I got this down, but I am saying that I'm open-minded, and I ask for support, and I'm willing to share my vulnerabilities and the things that I'm concerned about in order to be able to live well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, like this is the thing. I would say, like anyone who goes, yes, I'm the finished article, like whether they're in their 20s, 30s, older, and like you kind of like look at them and go, how are you the finished article? Because like there is always still scope to grow. There's always still scope to like learn. Like the only times when you like if you're living and you can't learn anything new is if like yeah, if you're unfortunately locked into your body or whatnot. There's
Yeah.
like Lou Gehrig's disease or something like that, then you kind of like stuck. But
Yeah.
you should be like going to always try to push yourself daily, day in, day out, forward, 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 until like yeah, you can't anymore because you shuffle off this mortal coil. And
Yeah.
look,
That's right.
yeah,
School is never over.
no,
School is forever. You just it are you going to be in the four walls with the teacher, or are you going to be by yourself, or are you going to be in the streets? But
mm,
you're always in school. The difference is, are you willing to learn from what you're experiencing? That's when you're not in school is when you're what I like to call sleepwalking, right?
yeah,
So you don't want to sleepwalk. So I no I hope that people who are starting off will reflect on this book and the things that I write about. The other thing that I'm curious about, and maybe your listeners will write me and tell me what they think, is that when I wrote this book, I wrote it, from my own experience in the United States. So this is a very American centric treatment. I don't know if this is going to make sense in other countries and other cultures. I think to some degree it will, because I'd like to believe that, broadly speaking, manners is foundational.
mm,
I've spent I've had the pleasure of spending some time in England and other countries, and I feel that even if I didn't even speak the language, because of body language, there's a way that, I can connect with people properly and sometimes not properly if I wasn't being thoughtful. So I hope this is useful because I'm looking to have a manners renaissance, particularly in our country, but hopefully globally, where at the end of the day, we can be real with each other. We care about each other. We care about the planet. We want to give to people. We want to give to ourselves. We want to appreciate people. They have a story and they deserve to be heard and respected and loved. Um, this is what I hope, and I'm committed to it.
No, like this is the thing. I think with regards to manners, in regard with it tied in with sort of mindset and like the approach of like building a team for yourself to go forward and succeed in the realms of don't be a taker, giving giving to others so they can help give to others and like basically help support and rise up. I think that is going to be very relevant for many a person. And like with
Yeah.
regards to the realms of teams, I think this is what sometimes I don't understand. There will be people that go, yeah, I like kids which are like, oh yeah, I love like watching YouTube. Oh yeah, I love watching TikTok. I love doing this. And they've got their favorite creators and like these kind of like go, okay, yeah, they started out by themselves, but like the sort of the biggest and the best creators out there, now they've got a team of people behind them. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you might not see everyone, but they still got a team behind them and like helping them go forward. So
Yeah.
I think it's an important message to like go, yeah, get on board to sort of like, how can I put it, to circumnavigate what your father went through when he was in the barber shop, where basically the crowd of people just laughed at him, like, oh yeah, like yeah, those guys might be laughing, but no, we're on mission with you, and
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna move forward. Like you get into Yale, I can get into Columbia, yeah, like my name, like my man James over there can get into like Harvard, yeah, and
Yeah.
just take it forward from there.
Yeah.
But
That's
it,
that's exactly right.
yeah, but I think it's definitely going to be very relevant
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And I really want your listeners to know that number one, I don't believe and I know that I don't have all of the answers. In fact, I say several times in the book that my book is not a work of scholarship. I didn't do original research on this. This is my experiences combined with what I learned from my mother. Plus, I did a lot of training inside and outside at
Mm.
NASA. So, this is a lifetime of experiences that I'm distilling into these messages. But I invite people to check it out and see if it resonates, to read other things, to figure out what works for them. I believe this work is foundational in that, look, let's face it, NASA is not going to hire you to be an astronaut because you have good manners, right? You need to know how to fly the spaceship. Otherwise, they ain't going to hire you. Having said that, there are thousands of people who know how to fly a spaceship and can do it very well, but only three or four of them are going to get picked. And how do you get down to the last handful? Well, I've spoken to the people who hire astronauts, I've spoken to other astronauts, and I know when it gets down to the last 100 or so,
Mm.
all of them are fully capable. They're all off the charts smart. They're fully capable of doing the mission. But how do you go from 100 down to 10? A lot of times it's a manners issue. They watch you.
Mm.
They watch you. They watch you when they socialize and they hang out and they want to know, is this person going to be good on their team? My younger brother, who's my collaborator, is a captain with American Airlines. Same thing with American Airlines. They wouldn't hire my brother if he didn't know how to fly the plane. You got to know how to fly the plane.
Yeah.
But here's what's critical. When you're in an airplane, it's not just you, the captain. You have your first officer and you got your flight crew. You got the air traffic control people, right? You got base operations. That team sole purpose is to get you from point A to point B alive.
Mm.
That's their job. Everything else doesn't matter if you can't do that, right? Everything else is fluff. But their main job is to get you from point A to point B alive. And if the team's not getting along, if they're fighting or there's some issues or there's egos going on, this actually happened in the aviation industry, because I knew this because NASA did this research where they found out, this is many years ago, that the whole cultural dynamics of the cockpit needed to change, because in the olden days, the captain, who was always a man, was God. Nobody ever questioned the captain. They found out that that often led to fatalities and problems. And so with research, we called it crew factor human research, and NASA did a lot of this research. We found out that we had to retrain how the pilots interacted with each other, so that the first officer, if he or she saw something that wasn't right, felt it was okay to question the captain and say, "Captain, I'm not sure that's a good move," or whatever it is. And the captain had to be trained to be open to that, right? So I'm saying they had to change that in order to increase safety. Now, they all knew how to fly the plane, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that most of the training that you do for being an astronaut and being a pilot has to do with handling a disaster, handling problems. When that airplane engine blew up leaving Denver not long ago, right? And they had the pictures of the engine on fire. And
I saw it.
let me tell you, those pilots, they were cool. And why were they cool? They practiced that scenario. They knew exactly what to do. That nobody was worried. They knew the procedures. They knew what to shut down. They knew how to do. They had all that down. So you have to be able to, you can't freak out. Oh my God, the plane's on fire. You got to be cool. You have to be cool, right? And that's a manners issue. It's manners. Being cool is manners. And so I hope people understand that this is not some old fashioned thing that, oh my God, I don't want to be told what to do. This is about how you liberate yourself from what you were told what to do and become who you are in a way that's going to work when you're together. That's what it's about.
I hear that. And it's terrific. Now, because you have mentioned the big NASA there. Now I have to ask, how did you NASA? How did you get from American University to NASA? How did that journey begin?
When I was in American University, I was studying economics, right? Not aerospace. I used to study aerospace in undergraduate. I changed my mind. I tell that whole story in the book. But when I was in graduate school, halfway through, I said, I don't want to be an economist. I want to help. What my passion was to help developing countries, because I had the privilege of living in many developing countries, primarily in Africa. And I really wanted to go back and do my part to help that out. That's what I was interested in graduate school. But I felt like I wasn't being trained in a skill to do the work. I was trained how to think. I can talk about demand curves and supply curves and marginal utility. I can talk about all that stuff, but I didn't want to teach it and all that stuff. And so one of my advisors said, well, there's this program in the United States government called the Presidential Management Intern Program, that if you're successful in applying to it, you can work for a federal agency. And why don't you try that path? And it's an actual job. And so I had to first apply to my department, then I had to apply to the college, and I had to apply to the university. They all had to say, yes, you can go forward. And then you had to be interviewed by the government, a panel of experts, because there was only about 100 of us in the whole country that were going to be selected that year. Wow. And so, and that was an interesting process. But what happened was I was successful.
Yeah.
And with that success, that meant that all the government agencies in the United States had a list of who all these presidential interns were. Oh, they must be special. So they had a list. And we had a list of government agencies that were hiring. Now, this is the time of Ronald Reagan. And so most of the jobs were in the Defense Department, and that wasn't my interest. So I was trying to apply to the State Department, like where my dad worked, and the Agency for International Development. But it turns out they had their own intern program. And they said, no, you got to apply to our intern program. But I had this bird in the hand, right? It's
Yeah.
like my fellowship. I had this thing. So out of the blue, I got a letter from NASA. And in those days, it was really a letter. I didn't have email. I mean, this is how old I am. And I got a letter and it said, "Dear Mr. James, we would like to interview you for your position." I said, NASA? Wow, why did NASA? How did NASA find me? I mean, I studied some engineering back as a
Yeah.
freshman in college, but I couldn't build a spacecraft right now. And so I didn't know if I wanted to do it, but my father, being the wise man, I was living with him at the time in Maryland. He said, "Son," and he was a diplomat, so he had a diplomatic way of saying things. He said, never pass up an opportunity to interview, even if you don't necessarily want the job. It's good practice. And I said, okay. So I accepted the interview and I got into the interview. This was at our space center in Maryland. And I told them straight up, I said, look, I have interest in the international field and I'm still looking, but I would be delighted to talk to you. Long story short, the next day, I got a call from the guy from personnel that says, "Hey, they really liked you and they want to hire you." And I said, I said I was still looking for opportunities. I appreciate it, but I need a couple of days. And anyway, they called me like 4 days in a row, 4 days in a row saying, "We really like to hire you." And I told my dad, and here's his diplomatic tip number 2. He said, "Son, this is an actual job that pays, and you might want to think about that." See, I was living with him at the time, so he was probably thinking, "Brother, it's time for you to get out the house and get a life and get a job,
You know what? No,
money."
I'm sorry, but he's like thinking, "Brother, you want to turn down NASA?"
Yeah, exactly. Like what's wrong with you?
NASA. Like,
oh man.
It's in the top 10 of most probably places where, forget that. The top 5 where people would like go, "Yeah, where do you work?" NASA. Ooh. But you're like going, "Yeah, you know what? Maybe not for me. Maybe not for me."
I didn't know what I was thinking, man. I didn't have any sense, but my father talked me into it. And so I accepted the job. And here's the message, because this is what I write about. A couple of weeks after I accepted the job, I had a discussion with the personnel guy who was in the interview. There were 3 or 4 people in the interview, plus myself. It was what he told me about why they decided to hire me that mattered.
Oh, I see.
See, it didn't matter that I did no calculus. It didn't matter that I didn't know any engineering. It didn't matter that I was not a scientist. And the book explains what did make the difference. And the difference was my manner. He said to me, "You know what? You were on time. You were dressed properly. You answered the questions. You didn't drone on. You were," and he told me there were other candidates that walked in these interviews and they didn't even wear a tie. And I'm like, they didn't, what? I thought that was like sacrosanct, right?
Yeah.
And so it was the message that I received. This was my first hint that manners mattered, was how I presented myself was what was important. Because you see, what they knew at the time, and I didn't know, but I came to learn, is they can teach me the technical skills I'll need to know to do my job. But it is almost impossible to teach somebody good manners on the job.
Yeah.
It's almost that is a different kind of learning that is almost impossible to do on the job. So they took a bet on me. They said, he's going to do well because not only does he know how to present himself, but he's self-aware enough to know that if he doesn't know something, he's going to ask for help. He's going to get the training. He's going to be committed to doing it. He's going to be determined, because with the parents that I have, let me tell you, sitting on my laurels and twiddling my thumbs like, "Hey, I got a job. This is cool. I'm just going to ride this out." No, that's not happening. That's not happening. Let me tell you something. When I was a school kid, the only time I ever got in trouble, and one time I had a whooping, was because I had bad manners. My parents never disciplined me if I got bad grades. They never disciplined me if I came home and I had a D on a report card. They would talk to me about what was going on, but Lord help me if I lipped somebody or I sass mouthed somebody, they weren't having it.
Mm.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear
What
you.
I'm saying is that they trained me that what was important was my manner, that will have to come first. And then if you admit that you aren't sure about how to do something, then you go ask for help. And that's what I did. And so that's how I learned the work that I did at NASA. That's why I took every training I could get my hands on. I did. If I didn't know project management, I took a project management class. If I didn't understand financial management, I took financial management class. I just took the classes
Mm.
because I wanted to be successful. And more importantly, as my good friend at NASA said, I didn't want to shame the family, right? Because we're representing when we're in NASA, right? Because people are watching you, right? And I did not want to shame the family, and I was not arrogant enough to think, well, I don't need to know this. I just do what I need to do. That's
Yeah.
that's not how I roll. If I don't know something, I'm like, how do I do this? How do I make this work? So that's how I got into NASA. And the reason I stayed in NASA is in 1986, when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded,
Yep.
I got involved in that after that accident happened. And I tell this story about my involvement. And that opened my eyes where I saw how people came out of the woodwork, teachers and students. They were so touched by the loss of the teacher who died on Space Shuttle Challenger, Krista McAuliffe, along
Mm.
with her 6 other astronaut colleagues. And I felt that because I was with the backup astronaut Barbara Morgan, and I went around the country to to talk to teachers and students with her, and I saw the love that came out, and I'm like, wow, if I can work for an agency that can inspire people just because of where we work, I said, I'm in. And
Mm.
I made a decision that I was going to make a career at NASA. And I did. And I rose to the highest level I could possibly go, short of being a political appointee, as Associate Administrator for Education in the Obama administration. And I'm proud of that career. And I'm proud of the things that I did. And I admit the things that I didn't do well. And I'm not too ashamed to talk about those. And I talk about some of them in the book. So
Mm.
hopefully people won't repeat my mistakes. But that's how I got into NASA, and that's why I stayed at NASA. NASA has consistently in the United States been voted the best place to work in the federal government, consistently, over any other agency of its size, the best place to work. And it's true. It's a great place to work. We have a great mission. And you just saw what happened on Mars with Perseverance, man. I was right there watching that like I was in the control room, man. I was on the edge of
7 minutes
my
of terror.
seat. You know how many things have to go right for all that stuff to
Oh
work,
yeah.
man. Lowering that thing to the ground, and I mean, because one mistake, man, you just put $1 billion of junk on Mars,
Oh
right? One
God.
mistake, it
Yeah,
all
there
worked
was.
perfectly, man.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, was it 8 years ago with another Mars rover where they got
Yeah,
like basically they made the fundamental error where one team went with kilometers and the other went with miles,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
lost that rover. This is the first, like the rover now is the first nuclear powered rover which is on Mars. Like it had a little. Did it have a little drone? I think it had a little drone which they.
Helicopter. They
Yeah,
had a helicopter on it. It's going to
yeah.
fly around Mars.
Yeah, and some of the
Well,
pictures which have come back from that have been like truly sort of epic, truly amazing.
yeah.
And I've got to say, yeah, there's a lot of things which are down the pipeline, which I'm what will go down there in a mo. But like, this is the thing I've got to ask, like, because you like when you started, it was as I mentioned earlier. I call it. I see it as the silver age of like
Yeah.
NASA. I might be wrong in saying that because I see the golden age as the right, like the movie The Right Stuff, when they were all like things would
The
blow up on a
Apollo. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
on a regular basis, going to the moon, and that sort of symbolized that golden age. And then basically the sort of late 70s when they proposed the shuttle to be put into action, and then basically Ronald Reagan like leading the charge, like going, yes, want to go into that next evolutionary step. That I see that as the silver age, and like basically today with regards to NASA, SpaceX, and basically Blue Origin, like
Yeah.
coming into play. I see
Yeah.
that as sort of most probably the next sort of big bold step
Yes.
happening with regards to everything with space travel
That's
and
right.
other countries coming into the play. Um, but when you sort of first started at NASA, like what what was your sort of first year like? What like because like it's like yeah, you say it's the best government, it's been voted the best government agency year on in for its size, and NASA is huge. What was it like your first year?
You know, for me, I was so happy just to be at a cool place. And I remember being in awe of meeting people from the golden age that were still around. I met Neil Armstrong and um, other notables from the golden age. Um, and I just remember feeling so lucky. I just felt so lucky that I got to work at a place like this. And I'll never forget my very first business trip with NASA. My very first one. I was in Maryland and I flew to Los Angeles because we were going to uh, help with the landing of the space shuttle at near Palmdale, Lancaster, out at Edwards Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And I just remember sitting on that airplane. I'll never forget. I remember who I was with. I remember the airline. I remember the type of airplane. And I thought, how cool is this? I work for NASA. I love telling people I work. I wear my NASA stuff.
Yeah.
I wear my NASA coat, a lot of times because I want people, oh man, you work for NASA? And I used to say yes, and now I have to say, well, I did. I'm retired now. But let me tell you about it, right?
Yeah, I'm
So
not going to say you got no influences on the wall behind you there.
nah, yeah, man. I got that. I got my poster of Endeavor flying over Los Angeles when we put Endeavor at the California Science Center. And on the other corner are all the pins that flew in space during my entire career, plus the flag that flew in space too. They gave that to me on my retirement. And
That's it.
I didn't expect that, and when that happened, I was just my eyes were full. It was very moving to me. It was just an exciting time, except when Challenger happened. That was a very sad time for
Mm.
the agency and for the United States. I also felt, I mean, I remember I had, after about a year into my time at NASA, I was at Goddard, which is in Maryland, and I spent some time in downtown Washington at NASA headquarters. And I remember I went to work for this office with this guy, a couple people there, and they didn't have an office for me, or we were all kind of in the same office. So I had a desk and I was in the hallway. And I remember my colleague was like so upset that, they didn't arrange to have a desk. And I was like, dude, it's okay, man. I work at NASA. I'll work in the bathroom if I have to,
Look at
And
the
I
back.
like to tell that
Like
story because
this,
I was like, I mean, I literally had a desk in the hallway because there wasn't room, and my friend who actually just retired not long ago, Dwayne, he just got so frustrated that he stormed out of the office once, and he went to the people who were in charge of offices and furniture. He says, "You got to do something about this. My man is sitting in the hallway," and I didn't care. I said, "This
it's like I am
doesn't
here.
matter to me." Exactly.
I am here. I am in the building.
Yeah.
I work at NASA. Can
Yeah.
you like an opening line to any lady you met in there? Hey, by
Yeah,
the way, you don't. I work for NASA. How you
yeah.
doing?
Now it's a lot of fun, and so I will say, because I don't want people to assume that it's all peaches and cream. I mean, it is a government agency,
Mm,
it is a bureaucracy. There are many days when it's not fun. There's a lot of paperwork. There's too many meetings, too many PowerPoint charts. There's there were times there was one time when I actually wanted to leave, and I actually did submit a resignation letter. And I write about this story. It was primarily because, on the one hand, I happened to have a boss at that time that I didn't particularly care for. I felt like I had hit a glass ceiling, if you will, that
mm,
there was no way forward. And at the same time, I had met um, reconnected with a friend of mine who worked for Lockheed Martin, and I really thought the world of her. She was a very, very special person, one of the few senior Black women in aerospace, and she offered me to come work for her. And so I decided that I was going to do that. The long and short of it is, NASA basically made me a deal I couldn't refuse to stay, which I talk about in the context of manners. And so the point I'm just trying to say is, sometimes in any organization, even if it's a cool organization like SpaceX or Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic or you name it,
mm.
on the outside just looks like a totally cool place to work. Google, right? People love to work for Google. You hear a lot of horror stories coming out of Google, and I can see how that happens, right? Because people are people. And so, I want people to not assume that if they work for NASA that or any space agency that it's just all going to be wonderful. There's going to be challenges, but if you step back and just remember the bigger picture of what you're trying to do, we were doing things that nobody did before, right? We were doing things that were groundbreaking. We were changing the world. I remember technologies back in the early 80s that just came to fruition like 10 years ago. I said, well, I remember that stuff back then because it was all high end research stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it was a fun time, but yeah, there was challenges too.
Mm.
I'll admit.
Yeah, no, but like with an organization with NASA and like basically looking like very much, especially when you're launching a craft into space, that yeah, the sort of finite things which can go wrong to
Yeah.
put people's lives in jeopardy. Like for
Yes.
example, Challenger, and like the reason why it's quite fresh in my mind, I was watching a Netflix documentary,
Yeah.
yeah, the Challenger
Yeah.
documentary, and like
It was
yeah,
great.
completely about the O-rings and like what happened to that sort of side of
Yeah.
things. And it's just like yeah, every time there's a launch, which takes years and years of preparation to get to
Yeah.
that point, and then which can get scuppered just because the weather changes.
Right.
And if you push it too much, which it sadly was on that sort of like day, people's lives can be lost, and
That's right.
that's one of the things which you're constantly aware of. And like with regards to what I mentioned about the rover, where it was like miles and kilometers, like losing all that money like that, and then sort of trying to justify that to the powers like the higher ups of Congress, and like yeah, this cost X amount of money, and it just went up in
Well,
like
what you lose, the money was spent already. So
mm,
what you lose is not the money, you lose the science,
yeah,
right? That's what you lose because now the rover can't perform its mission. So you're not going to get any data
yeah,
and learn about the planet. That's what's lost because the money which is spent, and this is a minor point. I don't want to insult your listeners, but no, there's no ATM on Mars or the moon. So we don't spend money in space. It's all spent on Earth,
mm,
paying for people's jobs to do work on Earth. No money ever needs to go to space because you can't spend it out there. So when you spend the money on a spacecraft and then it doesn't work, what you lost is it's an opportunity cost, to use economic terms, of
yeah.
what you don't get in terms of the science that you wanted to get out of it. That's what you lost.
No, I hear that, and like
Yeah.
I agree. But like, unfortunately, when it comes to the sort of media side of things, like they like often run
Oh yeah.
price tag quite quickly, and
Yes,
like
always.
and like basically, it's like, why are we spending this money to do this when we've got
Yeah.
all of these issues here, which what we need to be working on? And I would imagine, as you said, with regards to much of the stuff which was researched in the sort of maybe like mid to early 80s and like in the 90s, which are now sort of just coming commonplace today. uh, who knows how many sort of industries and what sort of new treasure that it may have brought to, say, the American economy, because that research was fraught, or new industries to the globe. Who knows? But that's something which is way above my pay grade. I'm a just casual observer.
Well, it's a fair question. And I'm not really much into a lot of the trade-offs, but it really, a budget for a government, just like a budget for a family, just like a budget for an individual,
Mm,
simply reflects your priorities, right? And it reflects the trade-offs that you're willing to make, right? So our country chose to invest money in space exploration for various reasons. In the Apollo days, it was primarily to beat the Soviets. It was a Cold War thing.
yeah.
And you can argue whether or not that was a wise investment until you look at some of the good things that came out of that. And so then the argument is, well, why don't you just invest in the good things in the beginning? And part of the answer is because we didn't know what the good things were going to be, right? We didn't know what was going to come out of some of the technology in terms of its application to other things other than space exploration. So we don't go to space in order to have the technical spin-off. That's not the goal of it, but it's an outcome that can be very, very useful. So how do you put a price tag on national prestige? And what about the young students who got inspired by seeing the space program and they decided that they were going to pursue engineering, and maybe they didn't go into space but they did something else? I mean, is that worthy or not? So I'm big on inspiration, and I think when we do great things to accomplish amazing challenges, that it can, as Kennedy talked about, it helps to organize all of our energies to step up,
Mm,
even together. It's just like, I think the history books are going to, show that this effort to create a vaccine for COVID in record time that never happened before. Guess what's happening? There's a lot of kids that want to be epidemiologists now, right? Everybody
mm,
wants to be the next Dr. Fauci. I don't think that's bad. I wish we didn't have to have a pandemic in order to inspire people to do all of that. But if we didn't have it, today it's COVID, yesterday it was Ebola, then
mm.
it was HIV, and you just go down the list. There's going to be more. So is it a good thing to have a lot of trained people who are inspired to help solve big problems? I think so. But I think the point's well taken. Is why do we need a problem in order to invest in something? And it's a debate that's worth having.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think so. I agree. I agree. Like, yes, one of the questions I'm going to have to ask, because like if I don't ask this question, my my lady will like come in and like basically rip away from my door so gracefully.
She's giving you the look, right?
Yeah, just like ask him, God damn it, ask him. Okay, 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 okay. Like, yes, space elevators. Yes. Is there like, have you heard of anything? Are NASA planning anything? Do you think it's a good idea? Look, I have to ask. Space elevator.
No, I'm glad you asked. And here's my honest answer. I mean, I wouldn't give you a dishonest answer, but here's my honest answer. I have heard of them.
Yeah.
I don't recall NASA doing any direct research into that. That would be considered a technology development program.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you truthfully, I don't understand space elevators. I mean, I understand the point of space elevators. The point of space elevators is, how can you make it easier to get mass, a payload, which is mass,
Yeah.
from the Earth into space, right? Because a rocket is 95% fuel and 5% payload, right? You have to have all this fuel and all this complexity just to get something up in space, right? And a space elevator is this idea of having something that can ride up something that goes high enough that it can be in space. I I don't understand it because I don't understand the physics of how you can have any solid thing that something's going to ride on that can withstand the forces of the upper atmosphere. And then once you get to a certain level, that it's, if you think about the speed of it going around the earth,
Mm.
remember it's like a record, the old record players.
Yeah.
If you're closer to the center, you're not going as fast as if you were sitting on the outside of the record going around, if it's a big LP.
Mm.
So because of the Earth's rotation, the top of the elevator is going to be going at a faster relative velocity than that which on the ground, which means there's a lot of forces and bending moments. And then the atmosphere, I just don't understand it. I've never studied it. I mean, maybe at some point somebody will figure out a way of making it work, but I'm not the guy to explain it. It's like black holes.
Yeah.
I don't even really understand black holes. I don't understand expanding universe, because the first question I always ask to astrophysicists, I say, when you tell me that the universe is expanding, my mind is thinking, expanding into what? He says, well, no, it's not. It's all there, but how can it be all there and expanding? I don't get that. So maybe one of your listeners is the physicist and is smarter, and write me a letter and explain to me how it works. But I don't get it. So I don't get space elevators. I don't. I don't really get black holes. I kind of do. There's so much dense energy, the light just gets sucked away, and
Yeah.
I definitely don't understand expanding universes. So that you got me.
Yeah. No, like
You
because
got me.
yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson when he was on Rogan and he was like talking about there's different there's different infinities. I'm like going, what? There's bigger infinities than others. I was like, what? It's like going, wait,
Yeah.
infinity is infinity, but
Yeah.
no, it's not. I was like, no, I don't need to. I can't process this right now. My
Yeah,
head
that's
hurts.
a
It's
little
like,
hard for me. But I'll spend some time researching space elevators just because I
mm,
probably need to understand it better. But I'm just telling you the truth straight up. I don't understand how they can work. I
yeah,
understand the concept and what the purpose is. I don't understand how physically they could actually work. I don't get it.
yeah, no, because I would imagine they would have to be like in an area which really has a low like sort of storm corridor or whatnot. And yeah, no, no.
What about the upper atmosphere winds? I mean, if you look at wind circulation around the Earth, I don't know there's any place where there's no winds. And then what if you get shear, right? What if you get at from mile 2 to mile 3, you
Yeah,
get winds going one way, but then mile 3 to mile 5, you go the other way. So now you've got countervailing forces on whatever object is on the elevator. How do you build a structure that could withstand that? I don't know. Somebody's going to have to educate me on that because I don't get it.
okay, okay, yeah. Well, I think you like propose
Tell
more
your
questions.
lady friend that she successfully played Stump the Chump.
Stop the
I
truck.
can tell her where we hide the aliens. I can
Okay,
tell you how to go to the bathroom in space, but I
yeah.
couldn't tell you about no space elevators.
It's like okay, stomp the chump. I will mention this to her. I think
She
I,
won.
yeah,
She
yeah,
get the prize. She
yeah.
gets the prize. She got the chump. That's right.
I think she's going to be, there's going to be part of her which is going to be happy, and then there's
Yeah.
be part of her which is like, oh, they're lying to you. Stop. It's like, oh, they're lying to you. There is a way. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm not too sure how happy or not happy she's going to be. Mm.
Well, let me know. All right, let me know.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, okay, yeah. Look, like this is the thing. Look, with regards to the theoretical and the sort of like more out there. Now, okay, like there's two TV shows which involve space, which I like. How can I say? A little bit obsessed with one of them, and I'm intrigued by the other. Like,
Okay.
like one of the TV shows is called The Expanse, and it's kind of like yeah. when we finally get out there, this is how I think the social political like sort of ramifications will play out, just because it is like Mars going independent because like one thing or other, people
Yeah.
living out in like in the sort of outer regions in the asteroid belts and stuff like that, and then
Mhm.
basically people on Earth, which is one way. But one of the things which I'm like intrigued about, which I like, there's a TV show on Apple, uh, for All Mankind. Have you seen that by
Yeah.
any chance?
Not I have not seen that one. I've seen previews of it, and it looks fascinating, but I confess I'm not that big of a TV watcher. I should watch more of these space programs just because people are going to ask me about it. But um, what intrigued you about that one?
Basically, it's like imagine. Well, it's basically the scenario is it's a world where the Russians are the first people to get to the moon, and then
Ah,
basically basically they're the first people to put a woman onto the moon, and basically
okay.
the United States is always playing this sort of game of catch up, but because they're playing this game of catch up, like a number of different things happen in the world where like they pull out of Vietnam early, and then basically they put all their money to sort of keep up with Russia, and like and like you like there's the first moon base and everything like this, and
Yeah,
like just you're just seeing like how far would they take it, and what sort of resources and sort of drive would there be to sort of
yeah.
get to that next stage. Season two, I believe, starts in about a couple of weeks, but yeah, it's very
I'll
intriguing.
check that out. Yeah, I'm not sure we can get it, but I'll take a look and see. It might be worth just doing a trial subscription just to watch that.
Mm,
It is fascinating to think about what I call these counterfactual scenarios, right? And how that would have played out. Um, if we had a parallel universe, to
yeah.
see here's what really happened, and then here's how it would have happened had something else happened. That's fascinating thought experiment.
Mm,
And what is it? What really motivates us to want to do this, right? It's yeah. It's sort of interesting to me now that the Chinese are on the moon and they got a Chinese flag on the moon and they're planning a human mission. How much of that is motivating anyone else to say, well, we can't just let them do it.
mm,
So, and I don't know that that's the reason to go to the moon. I think there's enough reason without that competition mentality, and I wish there was more cooperation. I was in my senior capacity at NASA. I was at an international conference in Germany, I think it was, and I was asked by a senior Chinese official about cooperating in education with Chinese students in education for some of their space missions.
yeah.
And I was open to that, and I thought that would be good, but I couldn't get any traction with that back on the home front because there's laws on the books prohibiting a lot of cooperation with China for space exploration from our congressional legislators have put in restrictions on things like that. So, I would have to get the laws changed in order to initiate something. So, yeah,
Yeah. But
interesting. I'll check it out for all mankind. Thank you.
yeah, no, do. I'll be in like come back to me and like
Okay.
you think. Absolutely.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, I'm gonna check that out, and I got to learn about space elevators. For your listeners. I am taking notes. I have a homework assignment. Remember what I said? Schools are always in, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at for all mankind in space elevators. And I hope all you listeners out there saw Hidden Figures,
Okay.
and I hope you would see the program that you had just talked about, the Challenger on Netflix. That's a great program.
Mm,
Uh, Apollo 13 goes back a ways, but it's about an almost disaster and how teams had to pull together to save the crew. Those are some of my favorite ones. But yeah,
yeah. Yeah. I have to ask, like, yeah. Look, I asked you to send me like your favorite movie or your favorite TV show. and you sent me the Equalizer. Now, here's the thing. Now, the Equalizer, if you're like, is it AE's Equalizer, Denzel Equalizer, and now there's Queen Latifah Equalizer. Which one is it?
Well, I love the Denzel equalizers. I think in my mind I wrote that because it's current and Queen Latifah's in it. And there's a part of me, I just love strong women movies, and I also love Queen Latifah. I mean, I've had a crush on her for a while. I think she's a fine actress, and Denzel is always one of my favorite actors. But there's something. And I admit it's probably not, good manners, how they operate, which is basically a little bit of vigilante justice. But, and maybe this will be a future book that I'll write where, if you imagine being able to do certain things because you have superpowers to stop from bad things from happening. And so the thing that I would want to explore is if you had that capability, you know, which means that you're playing God, what happens when people try to play God? And that's a theme that I'm interested in because I feel that if we ever tried to do that, that bad things could happen or unintended consequences could happen.
Mm.
And so that's something that I've thought about and I thought about writing about. So I think what attracted me to the Equalizer is basically, I mean, they're not gods in the movies and in the series, but they have capabilities that most people don't. So they get to correct wrongs. And so if you take it to its logical extension, if they really had superpowers, how would they use it? How do people use their power? And people are powerful now without being physically powerful or in a science fiction way.
Mm.
So I feel that there's a great responsibility. You know, when I got to be a senior leader at NASA, I'm telling you, being in that position was a game changer. I mean, I had people do my speeches, I had people do my presentations, I had secretaries, executive officers, I had teams of people whose sole job in life was to support me. I'd never had that before. And so what I learned was how important it was to be careful about how I wielded my power to
Mm.
just, tell people what to do and how to do it. I mean, I was very conscious of that. And I think people who are powerful can abuse their power. So I've always been fascinated by this notion of what happens when powerful people start exercising their power, even if they think they're doing good, right? Like the Equalizer, is there a downside to that? That's just a theme that I've been interested in. So that's why I picked that.
Mm. I see. And like with regard when you were wielding this power, like as you put it, was it a case of like did you ever find yourself like going, am I like check yourself in the mirror and go, am I getting carried away with this? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it happens more often. It happened to me more often than I expected. I give myself credit for being self-aware. I think there are people who have power who aren't self-aware and they just use their power because they have it, right? Um, but there are times when I did have to check myself. Now, I don't know, my colleagues would have to tell you how I did with respect to that. But I just remember a couple of incidents where there was one or two people on my staff that really got underneath my skin and pushed my buttons. And I knew that if I wanted to, I could have gotten rid of them. I could have, had them lose their job or transfer them. But I didn't do that, partly because it's a headache to get rid of people in the government. And the other thing is I didn't know that I was right. I didn't want to do that from ego, right? I
yeah.
mean, if somebody misbehaves or does something that's out of school, that's one thing. That's a disciplinary action. But because I just didn't like them, and there were a couple people I just didn't like, I'll be candid, in my mind, it's like, God, I wish I could just get rid of Bill. And I'm changing names. It's not really named Bill. But if my ego was the one pushing me to exercise that power, that usually was my sign that I shouldn't do it. So that's how I checked myself.
Mm.
And I knew better. I knew better. I knew the difference between somebody who just made a mistake that they shouldn't have and needed to be disciplined versus somebody that just got underneath my skin. I had a lot of people who pressured me to get rid of certain people because they got under their skin, and it's never black and white. It's a mixture of behavior and competence, so
Yeah.
it's never like always just behavior and always just competence, right? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so I had to do that. Had to do that.
Okay. Okay. I like it. Okay. Yeah. No. Now, I have to ask, like, okay, if there was three things you could change your NASA career, what would those three things be?
Well, one of them, and I don't know if this is the right order, but I made a couple of bad judgment calls in my career. Um, in one case, I almost got fired, but I had a friend who was in a high place who probably kept me from getting fired because I made a bad judgment call. I did something stupid. I spoke out of school when I shouldn't have, and I got called on the carpet for it, and I thought I was going to lose my job. And I I don't talk about this in the book, so this is news to people who are listening. You can't read this in the book, but this was a case where um, I I use all the skills that I learned about manners to engage in this particular incident.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, because of my relationship with another person, and he knew who I really was, it was because of him that I think that he kept me from probably getting fired. And it wasn't, I didn't steal any money. I didn't do anything like that. I spoke out of school. I said something publicly. And, what I'm frustrated about is that I did it anonymously on a website, and the person who ran the website, you know, got my IP address and told on me and told the head of the organization, and so I got outed, if you will. I didn't intend to be outed,
Mm.
and even though I still say that what I said wasn't very, it wasn't like I was revealing classified information, not even remotely like that. But the person that heard about it, the head of the organization, didn't take kindly to that, and I had to go down to his office and be subjected to his yelling at me, and I thought I was going to lose my job. So here's a pro tip with respect to that incident: if anybody ever gets in their job, gets called on the carpet about something that you did wrong, and you messed up, right? That's one of my key things. If you mess up, you have to fess up, right? Here's the question that I ask in all sincerity that has helped me, is that I look at the person. First of all, you got to let them vent if they're angry at you. You just got to let them vent, and this might even work in your personal relationships. Is just look at the person in all sincerity and ask this question: how can I make this right? So I apologize. I said, sir, I apologize for my poor judgment. How can I make this right? And when I asked that question, his whole demeanor changed, his whole tone changed. We ended up, shaking hands, and my friend was in the room, and he was being supportive. So that was one thing that I would change, is that I would not have done what I did. I think I'm trying to think of another example. Usually, the things that I think about like that are things where I felt like I exercised poor judgment. I I probably turned down an opportunity that I wish I would have tried out because I was afraid. I was afraid to do something or try something, and In hindsight, I wish I would have done it. A particular job that I'm thinking of, opportunity within NASA, if you
Yeah.
will. I wish I would have changed that. Um, and I think the last thing that I would have changed didn't really have to do with my NASA career per se, but it has to do with one of my biggest regrets. When I went to graduate school, I did it courtesy of our National Science Foundation on a 3-year full fellowship. And I got my master's degree in 2 years, and I was told that I could use my third year to go get a doctorate degree. And I remember at the time thinking, well, I put it off until the last year that I had to make a decision. And I don't know if I was fearful of getting a doctorate. I didn't know if I didn't want to do the work. And I'm not sure why, but I said, you know what, I'll just go get a doctorate later. I wanted to, but I
Yeah.
said I'll put it off later. And later never happened. I never did get a doctorate. And it's one of my top 3 regrets in my life. And it's because I feel that at a place like NASA, where original scholarship and research is very vital for your credibility, that it would have helped my own personal credibility. And plus, I just felt like it was something I wanted to see if I could do. I wanted to, can I accomplish this? It's an accomplishment. I think in some ways writing this book is how I made up for that. Now it's not a work of scholarship, but it took me 3 years to do and a lot of work. But in hindsight, even while at NASA, because I had a lot of NASA colleagues who got their doctorates while they were working, in hindsight, I would have gone back and done that.
Well, like this is the thing. You can say you haven't got your doctorate yet. You've got time
That's right.
side. So
That's
yeah,
right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't have it yet.
Yet. Yes. Speaking of that, look, you mentioned people with superpowers earlier. I have to reveal this one thing. I am a being of supreme cosmic power, and yeah, I I have the ability to grant you one wish. If you said you've listened to the podcast before, so yes, you should know some of the rules. You can't wish for world peace. You can't wish for, like, write down everything on a piece of paper and go, hey, I'd like to wish for everything on this piece of paper to come true. And you can't wish for COVID to be gone, because look, I've had to deal with that a couple of times,
Yeah.
like last year.
Yeah.
It took a lot of things to get it done. I had to even like employ the powers of Dolly Parton to make it happen. That too much cosmic dealing. What would your one wish be?
When I talk about higher power, I talk about universal energy. That's how I label it. Some people call it God, some people call it Brahma, some people call it Allah, some people have different terms for it. My term is the universe's energy, and my wish is to be open as a channel for the universe's energy to use my body, to use my words, to use my heart, to use my ears to advance the human condition. That's my wish.
Mm, excellent. Okay, like, you know what? I'll get working on that for you. Like, yeah, right away. Yes, like, watch out for what happens to you in the next 6 months, but that's another story. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to say this. Look, Donald, it has been a pleasure having you on today. Like, yeah, can you tell the lovely people out there how they can reach you, how they can get in contact with you on the great wide world web?
Yes. 2 ways. The easiest way, find me on the internet. I have a website. It's just my full name, Donald Gregory James.com. Donald Gregory James.com. And in that website, you can find a link to send me a note, or if you want to email me directly, I'm happy to get emails. It's the email of my book, Manners Will Take You at gmail.com. Manners Will Take You at gmail.com. just all that string of letters. Manners will take you at gmail.com.
Perfect.
My website, donaldgregoryjames.com. I love to hear from people. The book is available on Amazon, anywhere in the world. Just Google Manners Will Take You and find an orange book. You'll see a picture of my mom on it with me and my little brother as little babies on the cover. And I would be delighted to welcome people into this discussion about how we can create a manners renaissance. And I believe in my heart of hearts, particularly for you students out there and early career professionals, this is the secret sauce that's going to have you have a life and career of meaning and fulfillment.
Mm.
I believe that meaning and fulfillment. So I'm grateful for this time. I'm so happy to meet you in person. I've been excited about this ever since we connected, and uh, I love this stuff. This is great, and I wish everybody listening to this a great day, a great day.
Excellent, excellent. I will put your contact details in the description of the show notes as well.
Please,
Yes, people can reach out there and get in contact with you. But yeah,
please,
Donald, great having you on. Great having you on.
thank you.
And yeah, superb. Ah, yeah. Ah, see that? Awesome. I've got to say this, my friends, my life warriors. Yes, I want to say thank you for you staying with us right now. Please stay well, stay safe, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world and then some. Have a great day, guys. Yeah,
Amen.
and peace.
Peace. Peace.
And we are